Hello there! It's Friday, which means it's time once again for the best movie podcast ever, the only movie podcast to offer objective and hyperbole-free discussion of every movie in the known universe. I am your host, the podcaster with no name, and with me, as always, hush, thought I heard a call in her name now. It's Anthony James!
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
I don't actually know the second line to that. I wrote it down, and then I started kind of getting into it, and I kind of just... you know when you don't really know the words to a song, you're just like when you're in a club.
Yeah, you were actually feeling it, Konrad.
Yeah.
Konrad, I'm not to pick you. It seems like this last week I picked up something you did wrong in the intro. I'll do it again, Konrad.
Shit.
Because if the listeners were paying attention to my half of the screen there, I was mouthing along your intro with you there, and when you got to the point where you said podcast with a name, I went as if to say Konrad, and you didn't say Konrad.
Did I not say my own name? Well, then
I've truly the podcast.
I've remained true to the point. Sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. Like it really. Yeah, I like to maintain an air of mystery around myself. Folks, we've got a cracking show for you today. We've got a great back to the feature, back to form with a movie that I actually like. As opposed last week was Cable Guy, which we can all agree no one likes that movie.
It's a dark comedy. It was before its time, Konrad.
Yeah. Weird Matthew Broderick black comedies. We're going to talk about weird St. Louis. I'm not actually sure how. I think it's St. Louis. Cults. Yeah. More Indiana Jones stuff. There's a movie coming out that sounds really cool. And we are going to turn this podcast into a very quiet place, in case Emily Blunt and John Krasinski come and get us for our thoughts on the sequel to A Quiet Place. It's A Quiet Place Part 2. That's what we're going to be talking about. Let's talk about some gosh darn... I almost said goddamn there. I've censored myself. Gosh darn movies.
Well, you just... Okay. Let's gosh darn do it.
Movies, specifically Indiana Jones. I'm saying things really weirdly today. I just kind of said Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago, that some photos on the set of that there Indy 5 emerged. We've seen some new pictures this week, and Toby Indiana Jones is a member of the cast. Apparently, he's playing Indy's sidekick in this one. So Toby Jones, famous for playing a bunch of varied roles, including British intelligence bastards in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, Hydra scientists in... I think it was just the first Captain America he was in. He might have been in...
He was like, in Winter Soldier, he was like a computer version of himself.
Oh, okay, fine. Yeah, so he turns out, and a grocery store manager who it turns out to be a badass in The Mist, which was a great movie.
He's also in a fantastic BBC Two show. Anyone international viewers, you could have a look at Detectorists, and it's about metal detectors. Him and Mackenzie Crook, who you might know as the one-eyed guy from Pirates of the Caribbean.
It dates me that when people say Mackenzie Crook, their first thought isn't The Office. But, The Office was a long time ago now, unfortunately.
Well, I will say, I absolutely love The Office, and it's one of my favorite comedies of all time. Having said that, I will admit, when I was 12 or 13, I first saw him in Pirates of the Caribbean. Yeah. I will say, though, I do have a Mackenzie Crook fantasy children's novel autographed by him.
Well, hold on to that, because...
Yeah. He got it in a charity shop for me. I think it was like £2.
Oh, wow. Well, that's a good price.
It's got to be
honest. So Toby Jones is 100% going to betray Indiana Jones in this movie. I think we could all agree upon that. He's a British actor who normally plays villains.
I can't believe, to be honest with you, think about Toby Jones, right? I can't believe he hasn't been in Indiana Jones before.
I know. They got bloody Ray Winston in one of them, but they didn't get Toby Jones. It's like, what are you playing at? Maybe he'll be like Ray Winston's character in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and just constantly change sides without any provocation. God, that movie sucks. But anyway, Indiana Jones 5, we continue to look forward to that. Toby Jones is a really good actor, a good addition to the cast. Now, I'm going to take a news U-turn, or at least a hard left here, to something that isn't actually new news this week. It was written about a few years ago, but it's resurfaced again for some reason. In fact, actually, I know exactly what the reason is. So I'll start this off by asking you, Anthony, the question: have you ever watched Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt?
I've seen the first 2 episodes when it first
Okay.
came out. So the answer is no, because I don't really remember anything
That's
except for
alright.
the fact that she came out of being in a little box or something.
Yeah, she was in like a kind of sex doomsday cult
Yeah.
kind of thing. And funnily enough, it turns out that Ellie Kemper was in a real cult when she was younger. And there was an article written by, I want to say Vanity Fair, but it's a weird instance of my podcast listening crossing streams here, because I listen to another movie podcast called Battleship Pretension, and one of the people in that is from St. Louis. St. Louis. I'm gonna keep saying it wrong, so I might just stop saying it.
I always hear St. Louis, but there's also the film Meet Me in St. Louis. So
Yeah, I think it's St. Louis, but
St. Louis Cardinals. Does that make sense? Or St. Louis Cardinals?
I think it's St. Louis. But who knows? But it doesn't matter all that much. What matters here is that in this city there is something called the Veiled Prophet Ball, where basically all the rich white people, and they are all white because they don't let minorities and Jewish people join in, go to a masked ball where they get together and they parade around like kind of debutantes at court, in Eyes Wide Shut, and eventually a secret committee, and this is all like the richest people in the city, and then they get together and they elect a queen of the ball called the Queen of Love and Beauty. So imagine this like room full of the richest white people in like an entire state parading around, like, and they're all wearing these like extravagant masks parading around other like beautiful masked women. And Ellie Kemper, it turns out, competed in this and won it in 1999. And it came out fairly recently because she finally responded to, I think it was the Vanity Fair article, saying it was probably not a good thing that she was in this. And to be fair, she was quite young. She was like 18. But it's still... I love the fact... I'll recount that. I don't love the fact it exists, but God bless him for being so brazen about acknowledging its existence.
Hang on, 2009?
Yeah. So not a long time ago. It's still good.
She was in The American Office, I believe.
Yeah, I think she was.
That mustn't have been long after 2009.
No, I think so it's literally when you're like 18, 19. So she was probably in her early 20s when she was in The American Office. But yeah, so the only concession that this nightmarish cult of rich white people have made is changing it from the Veiled Prophet Ball, which sounds like something that has a human sacrifice at the end of it, to Fair St. Louis, which doesn't sound as insidious.
That sounds like not as insidious, but it is still like morally reprehensible. The ball that it takes place in Borat 2. I don't know if you've seen Borat 2 yet, but there's a ball which him and his daughter go to in Borat 2. And like they do, like, it's a daddy-daughter, like deep south ball where sort of it's almost like parading around your young sons and daughters, like sort of matching up the rich people.
Okay.
And his daughter,
similar to this.
His daughter does a dance, and she says like a dance of her people, and she like she starts like lifting up her dress, and she is on her time of the month, we'll say, and it's a heavy flow day, and the people there are absolutely disgusted.
I should watch that movie.
You really need to. Like,
Borat 2 seems alright. It's not even like through an active choice to not watch it. I don't know. I need to be in the right mood for Sacha Baron Cohen. Otherwise, it's just too cringy. It makes my soul hurt.
You need to watch, because Borat is the classic. You know what I mean? Like, Borat is the classic. Yeah. The old LG interviews too, but I mean, Borat is the one where he's able to sort of bring in the political arguments and stuff into it, and he's sort of, it's really interesting. He's almost like giving the opposite point that we did in the first Borat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's really, really interesting. I think you should watch it.
I definitely should watch it. I will get round to that. That is definitely a movie that is on my list.
It has reminded me, though, you talking about the debutante ball. There was a film, now I'm not going to say it was a great film, I don't remember much about it, but I can't even remember the name because I'm furiously Googling there while you were talking, and I cannot remember, but it was like a fake mockumentary horror style. I don't know if it was a found footage, but it was definitely mockumentary. Like they were trying to convince you it was real, and they start looking into this cultists or this sort of occurrences, and it ends up with them going to one of these balls. right?
Yeah.
And it's all filmed like mockumentary style, and it's quite creepy at the end. And it ends up like one of them gets targeted as like the sacrifice. It's really, really cool, but I can't remember the name of it. I'm sure someone out there will.
So it's what you've described there is either What We Do in the Shadows, which is
which is a What We Do in the Shadows,
or it's the Exorcism of the Last Exorcism or something. There's one where they're like he's like a charlatan preacher.
There's no exorcism in it. No, there's no.
Okay.
See, the thing is, I know it's not really good to say mockumentary because it makes it sound like a comedy, but it's not. I don't think it's. I suppose you'd have to say found footage, but I don't.
Found footage.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's portrayed as if it's like we found this footage. I can't remember if it was portrayed that way or if it's portrayed like these people actually made a documentary about that. Anyway. But it's kind of like it's kind of like the movie Catfish, but a horror.
Yes. Well, I mean that movie is horrific in many ways. But yeah, after if you remember that, tell me what it is because that sounds interesting. So the last piece of news that I wanted to discuss today, and it's right up your street, which is the reason I just kind of tacked this on to the end of the news segment, is have you seen the trailer for / heard anything about the Tomorrow War, which is coming out in like a week's time? No, 2 weeks' time from our recording.
No.
So it's like Edge of Tomorrow, time travel, alien-related stuff starring Chris Pratt and J.K. Simmons, which on the face of it is a bit like, this might be a bit generic, but it's from the director of Lego Batman, Christopher McKay, which is why I'm like, this could be quite good. But the premise is basically that a bunch of ragtag human resistance fighter types travel back in time to the middle of a football field in the middle of a game and basically say to everyone there, we need you to come to the future to help us fight because we're losing this war against aliens, and Chris Pratt is one of the people that gets sent to the future to fight.
That's an interesting premise.
Yeah, I thought I'd mention it to you because, like we made our bones with time travel related stuff here on the Culture Cave. And that slots quite nicely into it. So maybe we'll cover that at some point in the future.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. I will say, obviously I love time travel. I'm looking forward to that. Edge of Tomorrow or Live Die Repeat or whatever it's called. It was really good. But I will say, Konrad, I will say that I don't. Who would have thought that making one of my favorite actors an A-list star would sour me to them?
Chris Pratt.
Yeah, see when he was in Parks and Rec, I honestly love the man. And then whenever he got a role as Star-Lord, I was like, okay, this is awesome. Yeah. And then the first few Guardians of the Galaxy movies, I was like, yes, awesome. It's just like it's that guy from Parks and Rec, he's doing it. And now I'm just like, maybe it's also like the real churchiness we talked about that last week too.
Yeah, it doesn't help that like his brother has like links with the Proud Boys. There's like Chris Pratt.
I didn't know that, and that's even worse now.
Yeah, like Chris Pratt is one of those examples of, and I'm gonna curse slightly here, so cover your ears if you're underage listeners. The higher a monkey climbs, the more you can see its arse. Which is a quote from Phoenix Nights, and it's remained true throughout the 25 years since that show aired,
and that sphincter is well on show now. Let's be honest.
Yeah, there's no hiding from all of Chris Pratt's dirty laundry, and it's pretty dirty as it turns out. I'm on Anna Faris's side. is what I've decided.
She is the house bunny.
Yes, she was. I never saw that movie.
Although, I'm guilty. I don't believe in guilty pleasures because you like what you like, but the traditional guilty pleasure, I suppose, for Anna Faris for me would be The Hot Chick with Rob Schneider and Rachel McAdams.
Unbelievable. Okay, well, we need to move swiftly on from this segment because we're hemorrhaging credibility as we speak. Don't worry, I'm going to save it by quickly dovetailing this with the exciting new, and yes, it is still new, game show feature here on the Best Movie Podcast Ever. That's right, folks. It's your favourite and mine. Back to the feature! Here we go. So, for those of you who have not listened before, this is the game show segment where I have selected a movie from 25 years ago today. Anthony will have 5 chances to guess the movie. He'll hear 5 clues. Each clue he hears will lower the score he gets. And please, play along at home. Anthony, are you ready? I went a bit
I'm ready.
John Anderson there. Okay. Here we go. Clue the first. Actor Tony Jay, who played the villain in this movie, was also the narrator in The Animaniacs, as well as a recurring character in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles, if you watched it in the UK.
Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles. Well, that's hilarious that I didn't know that, because I didn't watch it in the UK. I was in Australia.
You saw the good version.
So Tony J. Did you say there that he's a cast member of the Animaniacs or an animator?
He's the narrator of the Animaniacs.
Okay, and is he?
He did a bunch of stuff, to be honest.
So this film is this did he direct this film or is he in this film?
No, he's an actor in this movie. He played the villain. The villain in this movie, and he is in a lot of animation throughout the 90s and early 80s.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so 96. I'm leaning towards animation here just because of who it is, Tony J. 96. Mulan.
It's not Mulan. I think Mulan was slightly later. Yeah, but it's a good guess. Okay.
I need more, Konrad. I need more.
Well, you've absolutely set the house on fire with your form in the last few weeks. So
the elusive 5-pointer is still out there, but
5-point is a hard one. I've got to make it hard. It's got to be hard to get, otherwise it means nothing. Yeah. Okay, clue 2. Directors Kirk Wise and Gary Trousdale reunited for this animated film, so you were correct in looking for an animation, after helming the only animated movie to be nominated for the Best Picture Oscar. And that's prior to this being released. There are actually 2 others now. But
okay, awesome. So we're talking about the directors of Beauty and the Beast. What would they have done next? I'm usually good with my Disney director trivia. Now the question is, what were their names again? Can you tell me?
Kirk Wise and Gary Trousdale.
Right. I think now I'm not 100% sure, but I'm thinking that they are the same directors as Moana and The Princess Frog. They're far too late, obviously. 96. Not The Lion King. They didn't direct that, and it's too early. Could be Hercules.
I'm going to push you for an answer.
But Tony J is not the bad guy in Hercules. I'm gonna go. No, I'm really struggling here. Because all the ones that's not are popping into my head.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a pressure cooker.
It is. Okay, I'm gonna go for. I know it's not this. So don't even comment me. I just want to get something out of my head. Black Cauldron. It came out in the 80s. I know it did.
It's not Black Cauldron. That's a lovely shout, though. Lovely to hear Black Cauldron get mentioned.
Just want guys to know that I know it exists,
Yeah, one of the lesser mentioned. Is it Disney? I think that might be Don Bluth.
It is Disney. Disney. You know what's really interesting about that? Is Tim Burton actually was a concept artist on Black Cauldron.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. So we're in an interesting position here because you're sort of right on the right. I think you know that you're on the right track here, and it's simply a case of figuring out which one it is. So it'll be interesting to see if the next 3 clues help you at all, because they may just confirm what you already think. But let's see. So clue 3. Alan Menken, who also composed music for Aladdin, Hercules, and Beauty and the Beast, believes that the opening number of this film is the best he has ever written.
Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, and what was the other one?
Hercules. Yeah.
Go the distance. Okay, so it's not the same composer as Little Mermaid then.
No.
He passed away anyway, earlier than that. I didn't mean to sound so dismissive there, but yeah. Prince of Egypt.
Oh. A lovely shout. It is not Prince of Egypt. It is not. You're missing an obvious one here. Is all
I am. I know. I am.
Okay.
No.
Clue number 4. This might give it to you.
I've got one in my head.
This was adapted from a Victor Hugo novel in 1831, after which 2 of the gargoyles in this movie are named, although they're not actually referred to as gargoyles.
Oh, okay. So it was in my head after I said the last answer. So I'm pretty sure it is the Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Let's just check with a computer. And ladies and gentlemen, he has done it. It is the Hunchback of Notre Dame. A solid 2-point performance for Anthony James there. Anthony, how does it feel?
It feels fantastic. Have the record show that I got it after the 3rd clue, but I got the points for the 4th clue.
Yeah.
I didn't need Victor Hugo to get it. I would have definitely got it from that.
Yeah, you were like right. You were basically on the right track from the first clue onwards there, really.
Black Cauldron, come on, pretty good thematically thinking.
I was I thought about. I mean, you got there anyway. But when I was writing that 4th clue, I thought I could mention Jason Alexander in this, but that's going to be too. That's going to give it. That's handing it to him on a silver platter. If I give him Jason Alexander. And the final clue, had you not have got it, had you not have romped to victory in such a convincing manner as you did, this was former Disney CEO Michael Eisner's favorite movie, a favorite of the movies the studio produced under his watch.
That's very interesting.
Which I think, knowing Michael Eisner as I do, I suspect that's because they spent a lot of money on it. And while this did make a lot of money back, it was one of the worst kind of received critically and financially of the movies in that era. Which, to be fair, it's a high bar. You've got, around that period, you've got like Lion King, Hercules, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast. Like what one might say the best period that Disney animation ever enjoyed was in that stretch.
Yeah, and we'll also say that the sort of priest figure in it, Disney seems to have a real history of like having these characters who are, it's really, really, really dodgy in terms of their sexual interests. Let's just say. Yeah.
Frollo, I think his name is in that movie. It's one of those. He gets up to some stuff in that movie that that maybe wouldn't fly in in a Disney movie nowadays.
I'll also say that the 2 directors who I said were Moana and stuff, I think they were Aladdin. But yeah.
Is that not John Lasseter, Moana?
No, John Lasseter. Well, he's since left the company, I think. Yeah. But John Lasseter was actually the head of Disney in terms of the creative sort of animation and stuff. So he wasn't the director of the films, but he had taken creative control of Disney as well as Pixar at that time.
Yeah. Okay, that's
now
interesting.
I think Pete Docter is now the head of creative at. Well, I think there's a group of them, but Pete Docter's one of them.
Yeah, that name definitely rings a bell.
At Pixar anyway.
I lose track, to be honest, but yeah, they run like a well-oiled machine over there.
Well, Pete Docter's the existential one. Like he does like Inside Out, Soul, all those existentially ones,
Yeah.
Monsters Inc.
All the good ones. Actually, I like Moana as well, to be honest. Like,
well, Moana's not Pixar, but yeah.
Oh, they're all the. I don't distinguish anymore. I'm just like, you know what? They're all doing it. They're all under Disney now.
Fair enough.
Disney made their bed with this, so they invite this confusion by.
Well, the thing is that the reason why I still specify Pixar from Disney animation is because Pixar are still. We still have little enough films that they're like choosing a message for each one to be different than the rest. Like they have their family film and they have, so they choose a different message for each one. Eventually they'll have so many that they'll have to start repeating it. But yeah.
No, I'm being deliberately obtuse. Of course, they are distinct, and we should respect them as such. I'm just ignorant of the difference, and therefore, as is my want as a personality on the internet, I reject any responsibility for recognizing the difference.
Konrad, you make me Poco Loco. That's all I'll say.
I don't understand that joke, and
that's a Pixar Coco joke.
I've never seen Coco. One of the many I haven't seen.
That's interesting.
I've not seen Cars as Pixar, right?
Yeah, well, kind of just avoid Cars.
Okay.
Cars 1 and 3 are okay. Cars 2 is absolutely terrible.
It looked like a movie, and I don't mean this to sound glib when I say this, and it probably will. But like when I think about like Pixar movies, when you watch like a trailer for a Pixar movie, it's like Toy Story or like Finding Nemo, and it's like, obviously these movies are to some extent designed aimed at children, but I can see like the appeal in the narrative to people of all ages. Whereas when I looked at like the trailers for Cars, I was like, this just looks like a kids movie to me. Which is
that's what it is.
And so it just put me off kind of ever watching it really.
Which is fair enough. I think like you're not gonna miss much in your life if you skip Cars.
Yeah.
But yeah, like if you lay awake at night thinking I need to see more Owen Wilson in my life, that might be the way to go.
I mean, yeah, I can always do it.
You won't see him.
No,
you'll hear him.
Wow.
Wow.
Anthony, I'll tell you what's not a kids movie, and that's A Quiet Place Part 2. Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about that.
I'm gonna lead this off by saying, I'm presuming you have seen the first one.
Yes, actually, I actually really liked the first one.
I did too. I think the first one was an excellent horror movie, and it wasn't a horror movie, to be honest. It was more kind of family drama that just happened to have some monsters in it.
Yeah, and I have a little bit to say about that. But what are you going to say there?
So we both watched it, and for those of you who don't know, this was a return for director writer John Krasinski of Jim. What's his character called in The Office? Jim Halpert. Is that his name?
Jim Halpert, yeah.
Jim Halpert, yeah.
Very original. They changed it from the English one, who was Tim, to Jim.
Yeah. They'll never figure that out. And it's starring pretty much the same cast. You've got Emily Blunt returning, Millicent Simmons and Noah Jupe as her kids. A kind of stand-in for John Krasinski's character, which we'll get into, in the form of Cillian Murphy, and a blink and you'll miss it performance from Jimon Honsu, which was an absolute waste of everyone's time as far as I'm concerned.
I love him. I
do as well. I was like, oh sweet, Jimon Honsu's in this, and then I was like, oh okay.
I will say that he did replace another actor who was going to be in it, who pulled out very close to shooting.
Okay. So maybe they didn't have time to kind of flesh out that character. So I think that the real place to start here for me is that first quiet. And I apologize to people at home if you are going to find it tiresome that we're going to compare, or certainly I am going to compare this to the first movie a lot. But it's a sequel. Those comparisons draw themselves.
Deal with it.
Yeah, exactly. So that first movie, I think the thing that I really liked about that first movie was it had really strong characterization, really strong kind of dramatic ties between those four core characters. And really the whole story was about this family trying to come to terms with the death of their youngest child as a result of their deaf daughter making a mistake, essentially, and there was this like brilliant interpersonal narrative going on that just happened to take place in a horror movie or in a post-apocalyptic kind of alien infested world, and I feel like this was missing a lot of that, to be honest.
Yeah, like the original inspiration which got John Krasinski excited for the script, because he didn't write the original treatment. He was given it, and then he decided that he really liked it and he wanted to do it himself and direct it, because he saw the because I think he was about to have a child at the time, or he just had a new child, and he saw it as like a real sort of allegory for parenthood in a way, in terms of protecting your children from the outside world. And I think obviously you can see the theme there carrying through into this one, the idea of his children through his memory sort of forging their place in the world on their own, which we'll get into a bit more later on when we're fully going spoilers. But I think for me, it is missing some of that sort of not quite horror aspect to it. It was like John Krasinski sat around the table with all of the Academy Award nominated writers that year, because he was nominated for an Oscar for writing this, and that. In my mind, I was like, "This is a brilliant film. It is like technically horror genre, but it's the type of film where I expected it to be a one-off. Like I did expect it to be a one-off, and it was going to be a really high-quality horror film with heart, and it actually kind of transcends the genre. But no, here we are, 2-3 years later, with a sequel that missed a lot of what it had in the first film, and is now potentially going to have more, and eventually it's going to just turn into every horror genre ever.
Well, that's really interesting you mentioned that, and we'll cycle back to a point that you've just made there in a second, because I think the genre of this movie, this sequel, when compared to the original, bears some exploration. But I think the thing that I really want to kind of drill down on here is that you've got essentially the same cast with the addition of Cillian Murphy and the subtraction of John Krasinski's character, who died in the end of the first movie. Though he does appear in a brief flashback sequence, one of the best sequences of the movie. Actually, I have to say, the opening sort of action set piece where they show the kind of small town where they lived as the alien invasion first happens is very, very, very good. But you've got Emily Blunt's character. Maybe this is me kind of speaking from a position of someone who was really excited to see how badass she was going to be at the end of that first movie, which to remind people who perhaps haven't seen it, they figure out how to kill the aliens, and they show the CCTV footage of like loads of aliens like rushing towards the house because of all the noise they've made, and she turns towards the camera and like racks the shotgun, and it fades to black, and it's one of the most badass endings of a movie I've ever seen, because it's like, oh, Emily Blunt's gonna go and fuck up some aliens at the end of this. And then in this movie, she's just kind of relegated to the sidelines completely. Like, she does essentially nothing for this whole movie. It starts promisingly with her character kind of taking her kids away from the farm, looking for somewhere safe to go. And if the movie had kind of stuck with that, I wouldn't. I think I would have preferred it. But I just think they did her character so dirty with what they gave her to do in this movie.
I think I agree with you, actually. It's not something that I personally reflected on because I was thinking more about the arcs of the children. But you're exactly right, actually. It's almost... This is very strange. In the first film, he wanted to have it be an allegory for parenthood. And in the second film, he's done exactly what you shouldn't do with parents and just make them nothing but bit-part characters in their children's lives.
Yeah, and I think you are. I think you're right in saying that this is really Millicent Simmons and Noah Jupe's story. And I think they do a good job of shouldering far more of the dramatic burden here, because they really do need to. I think Cillian Murphy is a great actor. I love him in a lot of things.
Yeah.
I didn't get a good sense of his character Emmett in this at all. I feel like he wasn't very well written. I don't think he got enough time for me to really understand what his motivations were or what he wanted out of anything.
Well, they didn't really need to do much with him in their mind anyway, but they should have done more. But it's because, like, we'll give this guy a kid. When we meet him, he hasn't got a kid. That's all the character development we need for him. Yeah,
that is literally his story. It's like, oh, his wife and kid have died, and I guess he's bitter and upset about that, which is understandable, but it's a shame when you I think for me, when you take that sort of close-knit family dynamic that was so prominent in that first movie and then kind of try to recreate the narrative of a father figure coming to terms with loss and learning to love his children, or not learning to, he never stopped loving them, but learning to be kind of like openly loving and eventually sacrificial for his children's sake. They are essentially retreading the same ground, but they're just doing it far worse with Cillian Murphy's character this time round.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Like, I do love Cillian Murphy as well, but yeah, it was all predictable in terms of what his character was going to do. There was nothing unpredictable. I will also say, like, to sort of finish off the Emily Blunt situation, becoming, like, sort of just to flesh out my point earlier, becoming sort of being taken over by the label of parent and losing your personality and losing your identity is something that my wife and I have talked a lot about and really tried to combat.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, and I think that generations past wouldn't have done that. And, like, I think of my parents, for example, and my mother, like, she was nothing but a mother for 20 years. Nothing but a mother, and, like, we are nothing but parents. Of course, being a parent permeates every part of your life, but you still have to have some sort of individuality, some sort of identity. And the fact that you said that has really sparked this feeling in me about this film now. It's like John Krasinski started with such fantastic ideas in the first one of wanting to show parenthood, and he's just succumbed to the harsh reality that some parents lose their identity whenever they become parents. It's really
And Emily Blunt, I guess we'll start talking spoilers now. Like, but Emily Blunt literally spends this entire movie running around after her son, trying to stop him from doing dumb shit.
Yeah.
Which is just like, from the absolute kind of badass warrior woman that she is at the end of that movie, like kind of newborn baby under one arm, shotgun in the other. It's like, oh fuck, Emily Blunt's cool in this. And then to this where she's just like, okay, I'm gonna stay in this factory for the whole movie while Millicent Simmons and Cillian Murphy go off and save the world, essentially.
Yeah, it's like we got these cool new characters which are like sort of weird sort of cultists kind of, who are going to kind of sacrifice you to the aliens. Oh, like is our main star Emily Blunt going to meet these people? No.
Nope.
She's not going to interact. Is she going to make it to the island where everyone's been living normally? No. She's going to go on a medicine run. And that's her whole story.
Yeah, now, she travels for like 2 days away from the farm and then stays in that position for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, to be honest with you, it's a real bugbear of mine whenever there's a bit of painting over the seams in between films. Like, I don't really understand. If she didn't kill all those aliens that came at the barn or that came at the house in the previous one at the end, how did they escape them? Because there's not bodies everywhere. There's one body.
I think there's one or two. I think I remember, because there's one by the stairs, and I think there's another one. To be honest, I don't remember how many they killed on screen at the end of that first movie.
Just one. They figured it out and they killed one.
So I think you do see 2 bodies. So maybe that's them implying that, oh, she has killed a bunch of them. But I do agree that it's disappointing for them not to realise that kind of action fantasy moment for her character. Certainly given how they went with her for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, like, okay, I agree with you. But at the same time, I will say this. It's the first time I've been to the cinema in a year and nearly a year and a half.
Yeah.
And I went by myself because we couldn't sort it out with babysitters and stuff. So I went by myself to the cinema. I was really weird to be in a dark room with lots of people. I had a lot of weird existential feelings. You know, like, has anyone ever, I don't know why, I think I've been poisoned by the media, but has anyone, like, just like, when they're in the cinema, they don't trust anyone else in the cinema? You know, I'm just like, they could do anything to me right now.
I mean, that's a healthy skepticism of the cinema going public that you've developed right there.
Yeah. But basically, I will say, this film was nowhere near the quality of the previous one, but we've been talking very negatively about it. I'll say this. It had enough drive forward the whole way through the film. Like, it was a continual journey. There wasn't really much pit stops in this one. They did sort of just go, right, we know what the aliens are. There's no point in building them up again. Let's go bang, 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 bang. And I kind of enjoyed the pacing of it, to be honest with you. I thought the pacing was good.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give the impression that I didn't like this movie because I really liked the first movie, this is worse than that by quite a considerable amount. With that said, it is still a decent movie. I still enjoyed it. I think in trying to kind of broaden the scope of the story they're telling, they actually dilute it quite a lot. Yeah. But it's still competently told. I think it loses its way a bit in the final act. But the first 2 acts, it's still tense. It's still scary. And I tell you what, boy howdy, if you like pedestal shots of people's feet, Quiet Place 2 got you covered. This is like the goddamn Lord of the Rings with how many shots of people's feet there are in this movie. Normally bloody as well. So if you're into that, you're in luck.
ASMR has hit it big.
Yeah.
Also, the moment, just to pick out a particular moment here, I will say we didn't see much of it, and we definitely didn't see enough of it. But the moment where, and I hope there's a third one, because in my mind, like, to have the same quality of the first one, it's either going to be a single-off great film or it's going to be a trilogy. Like, I don't like the idea of just having 2 and done. I think the way this ended, we need to have another one, because we need to have, like, see that moment where they were coming up to Cillian Murphy's compound and they just took out the thing and like it went mental and they shot it in the head. Yeah. The feedback from the speaker, and they shot it in the head. I was like, right, we need a third film. I will pay money to go and see a third Quiet Place where they're literally going around and killing them all like that. Like, I would pay money to see that.
Yeah, I think I would as well. I'm interested to see where the story goes from here and what they... what they can plumb out of the narrative, because they're definitely going to make another one with how well this is doing. It outsold Godzilla vs. Kong in its first weekend, which is pretty exceptional. But I mean, people are starved for good films in the cinema at the moment, I think, or certainly films of this nature. Now, this brings me to something I wanted to circle back to, which is that, is this a horror series? What do you think?
It's turning into one. I think it's definitely turning into one. If it is a horror series, it's the type of horror series I want to watch. Like if we're talking about actual, okay, let's forget how good quality the first one was, and this is just a horror series now. This is sort of the horror series I want to watch. I don't really want to watch any more exorcism-y stuff or Conjuring, like
Insidious and Conjuring, and
I like it, the fact that it's aliens from another planet have come and I like the aspect of like having to be quiet. I like this more creature horror films is what I would like.
I think so. The thing that that was really remarkable in the first film, and they do less of it in this movie, but they do still do it, is the film's willingness to be quiet. Obviously, clue is in the name, and there's several deaf characters. And that their deafness is represented through absolute silence, often when things are being told from their perspective. I think part of my frustration with this movie is and I will admit that maybe the first one had this, and it's been a year and a bit, I think, since I saw that first one, so perhaps I'm just misremembering it, but I don't remember it using the same tactics, so to speak. And this one felt a lot more jump scare heavy and very reliant on one of my least favourite horror movie tropes, which is characters doing stupid things to propel the plot forward. So we're going to have to get into spoilers here. So there's a couple of moments in this movie. The moment where Emily Blunt's character leaves Noah Jupe's character to care for her baby while she goes out to get medicine for him because he's got an infection. And for no reason, he goes wandering around the factory, stumbles across Cillian Murphy's wife's corpse because she's died of her illness, gets scared, makes a lot of noise, aliens come, we have a tense set piece. There's no reason for that to happen other than because he did something stupid. There's a moment where Millicent Simmons' character, who is like kind of tracking to to the coast to try and find a boat to get to this island, she knows she has to get there quickly because she's vulnerable, and yet she stops to investigate a train car and for no reason and ends up attracting a bunch of monsters. And it's just like, on their own, they're not awful. They actually lead to quite scary, quite tense set pieces. But when you look at them, it's like, this is very lazy how you've gotten to this. It's like, we're going to have a scary moment here just because we need to have a scary moment, and it doesn't. To me, it's a little bit of a betrayal of how well realised those characters were in the first movie. But I think I absolutely agree with you. I think this is a lot more of a horror movie than the first one. And I don't mind if this is what we get as horror. If this is like kind of the kind of horror movies that we get from now on, I don't mind that. But I think in leaning into its more horror aspects, it did lose a bit of what made the first one so unique.
Yes, and I don't like to just tear people down, but I will say, John Krasinski hasn't really written much, and A Quiet Place was basically almost a completed script when it was given to him, and it wasn't his idea, and then he applied his own ideas to it. For the sequel, he wrote it. And
I didn't realise that, actually. That makes a lot of sense, like when you compare them to each other.
Yeah, and this one really does feel like when he started writing this one, he's like, right, I have to write a script from the start. Right, let me Google what's a horror film. You know?
Start at Friday the 13th, and let's go from there.
Like that's what it felt like.
Seems like characters go wandering off on their own for no reason all the time. Okay, fine, let's put some of that in this movie. Like, no, John, you had it and you lost it.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And all those sort of characters being stupid for no reason. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It really rang hollow. But I will say, I noticed a little bit of a message he's going for here, or the sort of he was trying to, in my opinion, mimic something from real life. So something I noticed was a lot of the older generation characters, well, the two of them, were very much wanting not to change their ways. No, we're going to hide, we're going to stay safe, and we're going to survive. Okay, and the younger generation, now spurred on by the memory of their father, I'm sure, but they were more sort of willing to say, no, we need to actively go and change this situation and save the world. And in my opinion, John Krasinski is actually making a statement and sort of highlighting what is the case politically and like sort of movement-wise these days, it seems, in the world. Like, you have the March for Our Lives, you have Greta Thunberg, you have all these young people who are making big plays on the political stage, and I think that there's a little bit of that in there, you know?
Yeah, I think that's really well observed. Actually, I hadn't really thought about that, but there is definitely there is significance to the distinction between how young people are in this movie and how old people like me are, where it's like, no, I'm gonna stay in my chair and I'll wait for death. Thank you very much. Like, or the young people are like, no, let's change. Like, the young people have got their like kind of boundless enthusiasm and idealism in this, and it is that I think, to me, that's probably, now that you've mentioned that, I think that's the thing that works the best for me out of this is, and it's I'm not sure about Noah Jupe, because sometimes his character tips over into kind of annoying territory for me, but Millicent Simmons is like, yeah, like, she has this kind of burning intensity to and this sort of passion to change things, which is really evident in her performance, and that really worked for me, I think.
Well, at the end, whenever she finally gets the feedback through, and Noah Jupe hears it, they have the moment where it sort of mimics that the two of them are mirrored in what they're doing to the aliens that are there next to them. So they were sort of showing the two youngsters. Now, obviously, they are alluding to the fact that they're being like their father too. But I think there is that sort of real life mirroring going on too. You know?
Yeah, no, I think so. But yeah, I mean, so I don't want to rag on this too much because as I said before, I didn't dislike this movie. I enjoyed my time there. It was a worthy movie to return to the cinemas for, I will say. I'm glad we didn't come back for Mortal Kombat or something like that, because while I liked that movie, it would have been a harder sell.
Yeah, although I could see on IMDb here, Quiet Place 3 is confirmed. Well,
I'm not surprised.
It's in production.
I think so. The impression I've gotten from people talking about this movie is that a lot of people think it's better than the first one, which I think is insane.
No, but that's Conrad. The general movie-going public, they want a horror film. They want an edge-of-your-seat, jump-scary film. Whereas the original one, maybe people liked it because it had those aspects in it, and they didn't, you know, if you took all of the horror aspects out of the first one, right, and it was just sort of like a independent style on a farm, you know, and there are these aliens about, but there was no horror aspect to it whatsoever, it wouldn't have been as successful.
No, that's true.
So they've taken the part that brought the people to see it the last time, and instead of saying, hey, we accidentally made you see something of quality, instead of being like, let's do it again, they were like, well, let's just give them what they thought they were going to get in the first one.
Yeah, lots of jump scares, like skeletons falling out from behind doors, like we're watching an Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah, exactly.
That whole train sequence is so dumb. I was watching it like, what are you doing? We've already established that you're like a day's walk from the coast. Just walk to the coast. Stop faffing around.
But also, like, I don't really understand why it was so hard to get the first aid kit.
Yeah,
I know there was a body on the other side of the door, but like, come on, like that.
I think the last thing I will mention for this, just because it made me laugh a bit, was the final act where they get to the island and they meet this community that have figured out the aliens can't swim, and they're all living happily and making noise on this little island, and then it just immediately gets fucked up because apparently the aliens learn to drive a boat.
No, did you not see? This is the funniest part for me, was when it went to after the whole little like sort of marina scene, and then like Millicent somehow got into a boat,
like driving it,
picked him up out of the water. But anyway, we'll leave that there. It then showed a wide shot of the island they were going to, and I see a boat in the foreground, and I was like, oh, okay, that's their boat, they're on the way. But then I focused on the boat, and it actually was the boat with the alien on top of it. It's like they actually showed it to you in the wide shot.
Okay, I thought that was their boat as well, so I didn't think... So, wait, was it driving the boat, or did it just drift to the island?
Just drifted. It just drifted.
It still seems a little bit implausible. And also, like, the idea that this, like, island community doesn't have a single lookout on the coast to be like, there's a boat coming.
Well, I will say, it was... I mean, it was very obviously set up, but at least they set it up. Like, before they found the little girl and then Cillian Murphy's neck got covered in bottles or whatever, he did unlatch a boat, and then that's the true. One. So they did set it up. Having said that, this is, again, John Krasinski going to Google, how do you make a film? Because there was so much set up where I was like Cillian Murphy at the baseball game, like doing the symbol, like the sign for dive.
Oh yeah,
thank you.
There it is. Return. Lovely return.
There was so many like little setups like that where I was like, there it is. Thank you, John Krasinski. We'll expect that in about an hour. Like, there was so many of them.
I feel like, I mean, tell me what you think about this, but I just feel like that entire island thing, I think they still needed to do it. They obviously needed to get to the radio station. Mm-hmm. I feel like they could have just cut all of that. Like, just have them turn up on the island, everyone's dead, but the radio station is still active. Just skip, because, like, you get this kind of weird reprieve before the final action sequence where Jimon Honsu gets a little bit of a monologue. Cillian Murphy looks out to the sea longingly and cries, which is the most characterization we ever really get from him. And then an alien shows up in the morning and kills literally everyone, including characters that we haven't met before, and it just doesn't work for me. It's just wasted space, I think, in that movie.
I think I understand. Yeah, I know what you mean. I understand the idea of having that little reprieve, but the thing is, the film's only an hour and 37 minutes long. It's
get it under 90 minutes. That's what we need to be back to.
Yeah, you take that out, you're all of a sudden around Scooby-Doo levels of length.
Oh, that's what you want. 82-minute length. Come on.
Yeah, that's what you want. But the thing is as well, I think actually, I'm thinking about that, the fact that they were going, if you're going to have that community on the island, right? What I would say the best thing to do would be to... Now, again, we're telling John Krasinski how to do his film here, but I would have preferred, instead of ending the film with like the signal being sent out, I think I actually would have preferred ending the film as they approach, like, maybe all of them went, right? They all went, and they approached the village with everyone being happy and making noise there, and that's the end of the film. And then the third one comes back, and you start in that place, and then the third one, you got a storyline, because all of a sudden now there's an alien on the thing, and you could have all the tension from the first one around this village.
Yeah, I mean, they could have expanded that cult stuff in the marina and made that the closing, because again, that's another thing that's just a bit like this feels a bit tacked on. Like I would have liked to have seen more of this, like, doomsday cult of people who
also it's been what, a year and a half? What's going on? Like,
it's enough time to form a doomsday cult. You know what, speaking, I wasn't going to mention this, but I watched Demolition Man this week, and talking about things changing a ridiculous amount in an implausibly short amount of time. I think that movie starts in like 1996, and he wakes up in like 2033, and by then, like, humanity has completely gotten rid of, like, all violence. The police force has been defunded, like, and demilitarized, and like language has changed completely. It's just like, I miss when sci-fi movies did stuff like that. So maybe I should be grateful for A Quiet Place Part 2 for just implying that in a year and a half people can turn into, like, essentially cannibals.
Yeah, like, that's really weird, isn't it? Like, yeah, I didn't agree really with that. I thought 10 years in the future, it's believable. Now, maybe in real life that would happen, but it's like, it needs to feel like a film. Like, it needs to feel like something that's tangible. It's like Ema told me in terms of costume. There's particular if you go back in time, right, maybe 300-400 years or whatever, it wasn't the fashion to have a white wedding dress. But even though that is, most films, if they do wedding scenes previous to white wedding dresses being the thing, they still have the bride in a white wedding dress.
Yeah.
Because, or at least a modern looking dress in a way, because we as an audience need to understand the visual language of what's happening, and I kind of feel like having a doomsday cult like 400 days later with people literally like sacrificing other, I kind of feel that is sort of advancing and making it a little bit not believable,
Yeah, I mean, I think I was into the aesthetic of it, but it is stretching the credibility of the world they've created.
What are the chances that in that little area there was like 30 people who managed to survive and were also the type of people to want to kill others,
Yeah, and they just like hang out in a marina as well by the looks of things as well, which is like...
It's like in Last Man on Earth, the comedy with Will Forte, he puts up signs saying alive in Tucson. They put signs up saying cannibals at the marina. And a lot of people are like, oh, that's where we can go and eat people.
Yeah,
down there.
if that's what you're into, that's the place to go. But yeah, so that, I mean, I think that's probably going to do it for us on Quiet Place discussion. Any final thoughts from you on the movie that we haven't discussed already?
No.
Fine.
I don't think so.
Say. No, that's cool. So yeah, good movie, I think, but I can't wholeheartedly recommend it personally. Yeah. But that's going to do it for us here on the Best Movie Podcast Ever, which leaves us with just one simple question to answer, as we always do, and that is, Anthony, what is your favourite movie?
I think I've actually had this as my favourite movie before, but I'm going to go with it again anyway. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3.
Excellent choice.
They go to Japan.
They bring back Casey Jones for that one, and that's all I can ask for. I'm going to say A Quiet Place 1, because that movie kicks a lot of ass. So thank you to Nancy Wyatt and Jared Iscariot for the use of our theme song. Check out a link to their stuff down in the thing below. And thank you to you for listening. Please consider subscribing to us. We are the Culture Cave on YouTube and the Best Movie Podcast Ever on podcasting apps. And we will see you same time, same place next week.
And cut.